Both sides have arguments in this. As you say, Israel has its right to defend itself. Hamas is using civilians as a human shield. Hamas is saying it's an asymmetric war. They have nothing like the capability of Israel to respond. Both sides have points in this, but what is the way forward towards peace in your view?
Well, first of all, we do have to clarify the record. When Israelis see any civilian losses on the Palestinian side, there's a sense of regret, there's a deep sense of even sadness, not glee. And at the same time, we're absolutely certain about where the moral responsibility lies at events like this, and with whom. Because Hamas has deliberately embedded its weaponry in its civilian population. This particular neighborhood is called Sajaiya. We've gone over that
point several times. We understand that, about your point about Hamas using their people as human shields. And we all know that.
But it's not just human shields. Excuse me. Sajaiya is the manufacturing area of the rockets. It's the place where the rockets are stored, and it's the place where the rockets are launched from. In international law, that is a legitimate military target. But nonetheless, as you know, we've issued warnings. Warnings through the radio, warnings through leaflets, and warnings through individual phone calls to families on their cell phones or text messages. We tell them to get out because they are sitting on a military target. I don't know an army in the world fighting in Afghanistan, Iraq, or elsewhere that has done that, but Israel does.
Mr. Gold, we know about the asymmetric warfare, and we know about the claims that Israel has, and I don't think the international community is in any doubt that Israel is in a position to defend itself. But if you're going to talk about international law, then international law states that a proportionate response is appropriate. Anyway, I was trying to get away from blame and talk much more about a solution to all this, because counter-blame and blame is just perpetuating the cycle of violence and death.
Well, there really isn't also a cycle of violence. The violence begins with Hamas launching rockets at Israeli cities. It isn't like one day Israel said, we have nothing to do with our Air Force, so let's go into the Gaza Strip. They launched rockets, we reacted. Now, we're prepared to halt this whole thing, and we've agreed to the Egyptian Ceasefire Initiative, which is approved by the Arab League and many Arab states. And therefore, let's go forward with that. But then there are all these other intermediaries who want to get into this conflict. And the more cooks you have in the kitchen, the more difficult it is to come out with a final product. We are ready to accept the Egyptian initiative. Let Hamas do the same.
Who do you want to facilitate that approach then? You're ready to accept that initiative that's been brokered by Egypt. Hamas, for their part, say they haven't been consulted. Are you willing to talk to Fatah or Hamas about this? And who should facilitate that conversation in your view?
Well, first of all, we are prepared always to speak to the Palestinian Authority leader, Mahmoud Abbas, although he was the one who brought Hamas into his tent to begin with. But let's set that aside, because you're right. Let's look at how we go forward. So we're prepared to accept what Egypt has offered. So I think now's the time, especially with the whole Arab League behind us, to go forward and work with what the Egyptians have put on the table and not mix in all these other countries that want to get into this whole ceasefire negotiation.
So Mahmoud Abbas and Ban Ki-moon are in talks at the moment in Qatar. Qatar has facilitated those talks. Could you send an Israeli envoy there to perhaps push forward the idea of peace?
Well, frankly, we are adhering to Egypt as the intermediary. They're the ones, again, they came forward with the idea. They came forward with an idea that was accepted widely. We have another problem today. The Arab world has huge internal struggles that are reflected in the war in Syria, the war in Iraq, and other areas where there's conflict in the Arab world. Qatar is on one side of many of these conflicts, for example, in Syria. Others are on the other side. That's why we took a consensus country like Egypt, which has always been the leader of the Arab world. They're the ones who've brokered these ceasefires in the past, and we think they should broker it now. Again, we're prepared to work with them. The Arab League, which represents all the Arab states, is ready to work with them. So let's go forward. Let's not waste any time. People are just getting killed. And we're having losses on our side. There are losses on the Palestinian side. We're prepared for an effective ceasefire, but it requires the Hamas to agree to this Egyptian idea.
Dore Gold in Jerusalem, thank you for talking to us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Now, the common